Welcome, everybody, to the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Channel. My name is Ross Benjamin. I'm your host, and like every Monday, and it is a Monday, December the 4th, I'm joined by Mr. Doug Upstone of DocSports.com. Today, we're going to be discussing a couple early looks at NFL games. One that goes on Thursday night, or looks like a real yawner that Doug's going to be covering between the Patriots and the Steelers. And I'm going to be looking at the NFC South battle for first place, because lo and behold, the Atlanta Falcons are first place team with just 5 weeks to go in the NFC South. In Tampa Bay at 5-7, Doug, they're just a game behind. So talk about that's the NFC South. Is somebody's going to win that division, and most likely, I would say, with a losing record.
Very much could happen, from that standpoint. You look at Atlanta's schedule, it's not impossible, especially if they win this week, from that standpoint, that they could have a winning record. But if you just watch how all the teams in this division play, wow, it's underwhelming, as the word I guess I would use, okay, from that standpoint. Yes. So, yeah, we got two games that riveting action, okay, to talk about this week. And Ross, speaking of riveting, how about the results for the four teams to be in the college football playoffs? Go ahead. You can lead it off.
Yeah. Okay. So there's another gentleman that does a show with me. He's very familiar to the audience. As a matter of fact, he's on with me today. That was not a proponent of expanding the college football playoffs. And if they were, he said, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Upstone, 6 teams. Okay. Right. So his idea was to give the first 2 teams a bye, the number 1 and number 2 teams to be specific. And then the other 4 teams play it out 3 through 6. And then the winners of that take on the 1 versus 2. What an ideal formula that would have been this year. But I'll go one step further. I mean, again, I really, really wish the 12-team playoff started this year. I do, because I think it could have been as wide open as it possibly can be. Because, Michigan's undefeated, and they're the number 1 team in the land right now, according to college football rankings. Washington had a fine season, but let's face it. I mean, again, give them credit, they're 13-0. They beat Oregon twice, who I thought would win the national championship, and I was wrong there. But in any event, that's a Washington team that's won their last 9 games now by 10 points or fewer. So I guess you can make a case for Michigan being the most dominating team in the country, albeit I don't think their schedule, their strength of schedule, really measures up to like the SEC, maybe even the Big 12 for that matter. Texas gets in. I think that was deserving. If you're going to bring Alabama, first of all, there's no way in hell the committee, Doug, was going to leave out the SEC champion, okay? So now I'll put them in a pickle, because how do you put Alabama in there and not Texas? Now, if Alabama beats Texas earlier this season, they didn't at home, then we'd probably be looking at Georgia in Texas's spot, or maybe even in the other spot. So I guess Florida State getting left out. I know that there's a lot of people out there, and you can make a solid case for Florida State saying, hey, they did what they were supposed to do. They won all 13 games. They played in a Power 5 conference. But if you took what the committee said last week, or the head of the committee said last week, literally, we're not interested in taking the 4 most deserving teams. We're interested in taking the 4 best teams. Florida State's down to a 3rd-string quarterback. Does anybody? I know that their defense played good against Louisville, but come on. Louisville was an overachieving team this year. Coach Brom did a terrific job at his alma mater in his first year there. But they lost their last 2 games against Kentucky, and then they lose to Florida State, and they were competitive only because Florida State was without Jordan Travis. That's the only reason why, or they would have got blown out. And at the end of the day, they lost another game against Pitt. So that win over Louisville means very little to me. But if you are to take, getting back to what I just said, Doug, if you are to take the literal sense of what they said last week and the four best teams being there, I think the only argument, a solid argument with that in mind, is that of Georgia's. Your take?
I would in part agree with that. I do find, I guess you can look at it two ways: either ironic that that was said, or it was a tell as to what they were actually thinking about. And as it turns out now, it seems like it's a tell, because they didn't really come out prior to that and say that they're going to take the four best teams. Okay, they were going to select four teams. So when Jordan Travis goes out, well, guess what? There's an easy out for them, right? Okay, yeah. They can say, well, he's not played. Well, how about a hypothetical here? How about if Florida State and let's just say whoever they would play, let's just say it's Michigan, for example, if they went 1 versus 4. So on the first play of the game, J.J. McCarthy goes out. Okay, he's injured. What does that do? Okay, does that change the dynamics of that game? Is Michigan, okay, are injuries part of the game? Of course. So, I mean, 13-0 is 13-0. Okay. The ACC had a better record against the SEC, 6-4 this season. So I don't want to hear the SEC is the better conference. Okay. You made mention of the Big 12, the Big 10, saying they played a weak schedule. They had a weak non-conference schedule, and they didn't really play hardly anybody but 2 teams all year. Okay. That were very good. So from that standpoint, I just think Florida State got royally screwed, okay, across the board. I mean, they went 13-0. Injuries are part of the game. They chose to make it an issue, okay? They didn't have to make it an issue. And I hear some of the guys, well, they didn't take the easy way out because they went with that. Well, that's fine, okay? You can have that way of thinking. But if you were in that Florida State locker room and those players listening to those coaches the entire season, and you go 13-0 and you still don't get in, I don't know. There's one of those things there's rights and wrongs, and you can determine what you decide is right or wrong. Okay, each and every person that's watching this video, my personal opinion, 100% wrong, 100% not deserving. Alabama, I know they beat Georgia, and the other thing that I get, if you want to go by history, the first was at 9 years, no team had ever come from anywhere from below 6. Okay, to rise up to make the playoffs. This year we had 2 teams that were below 6 that raised the playoffs. So if history taught us anything, it's not to believe what these people say and do. Okay, now it's all over because next year is completely different, and we won't be really arguing about an 11 or 12 team getting in. Okay, there might be a little bit of argument, but so it is water under the bridge at this point. It's just a really rotten deal for Florida State. I couldn't feel worse for them personally.
Yeah. Here's my retort, and I'll give you an opportunity to answer what I say here. But I get what you're saying about McCarthy if he was to go out in the first play of the game against whoever they're playing, Alabama in this instance. It puts a whole different spin on the game. I get that. You can't account for that, though. You can't account for what's going on right now. If Florida State's down to their third-string quarterback. Now, here's what I would say to the NCAA. Shame on you, because I've been calling for an expanded playoff for the last 4 years because of this exact type of scenario. And with the parity in college football right now, and with the NIL going on, there's going to be 12 quality teams going forward. And yes, there's going to be a 13 or 14 that didn't make it to make a case. Okay. Right. But this year, okay, I mean, look at who got left out. Okay. Look at Georgia. Look at Ohio State. And look at Florida State. Those 3 teams are capable, especially Georgia and Ohio State, are capable of beating anybody. I know the Florida State contingent's going to jump all over me like they did last week. Okay, that's fine. I appreciate and I appreciate Doug's point. And I appreciate the loyalty of the fan base at Florida State. And I appreciate anybody who makes the case and says, look, they went 13-0 in a major conference. They beat LSU early in the year. They beat LSU with Travis at quarterback, though. Honestly, Doug, do you think that Florida State would stand a chance in the semifinal against not only the 3 teams that are in it or 4 teams that are in it right now, even against an Ohio State or Georgia. No chance. There's not, I mean, they've learned their lesson with this in years past. I'll use Notre Dame for an example. Mm-hmm. They were the deserving team that got in at that particular moment in time. The one year they went undefeated, and everybody knew that they played a soft schedule, and the chance of them beating Alabama was going to be null and void. So, again, Doug, any further thoughts, and then we'll move on to our NFL picks.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is that, I mean, there's been plenty of 4 seeds, okay, that have gotten lambasted, okay?
Yeah.
And, Jake Browning with Washington comes to mind, okay, that team. I mean, there's been plenty of them. And, but why did they go? They went because they were the best team, okay, that was available, and they won a conference, okay? So
let me ask you this, Doug. In that particular year and in most years, do you remember where there's not – when was the last time you could remember a team clearly being the number 1 team in the country, clearly being better than the rest going into the tournament? It's always seemed to be defined. Now, Georgia and Alabama getting to the finals is an exception to the rule. I'm talking about take the SEC away against the SEC when Georgia played Alabama. I can't recall where in a season like this – where the parity was so good, and I think that cost Florida State. I really do. I think that any other year, even with the quarterback situation, it would be a moot point. They would have to put him in. But this year, again, I would take Ohio State over Florida State right now. That's the way I feel. I would take Georgia over Florida State. And if Ohio State or Georgia played Florida State, who would be the favorite in that game?
Well, if to your reasoning there, if that's the case, then why play the games? Okay, because
I get that.
Hold on. If we're going to go this down this road, right. let me say my piece. Is that if it's based on the best teams taking the best teams and everything being equal, then if we have a point spread that defines who the team that's going to be the favorite is, then why play the game? I mean, because that's the best team. And if that's what the goal is to have the best team win the national championship, but it's not. It's the best team on that day. Okay. And so to my point, what I was getting to about McCarthy, for example, if Florida State played Michigan and particularly if Rodenbach would come back, okay, and it was that's the case, those 2 teams without their starting quarterback, it's a lot different scenario. Now, we don't have any idea to what you said. We don't have any idea if that could ever happen because we do know that Travis Jordan's not playing. I agree with that. I just think no matter what, we could have the 2 best teams playing as 1 and 4, and the game can be a blowout, like last year's championship game. Okay, it can be an absolute blowout. So we don't know until it starts. But again, we do know that Florida State's 13-0. Okay, that's undeniable. And Alabama had a loss. Georgia had a loss. I'm particularly Alabama getting in. That more than anything irritates me. And I know they beat Georgia, but they beat them by 3 points. Georgia goes from 1 to 6, losing 1 game by 3 points. Wow. Okay.
I said last week, Jesse had mentioned that he thought that if Georgia lost, they were going to be out. Yeah. And I said, I thought he was out of his mind because I said, how do you leave a team out that went 12-0 and loses in the SEC title game and has won 30 straight games going in and is the 2-time defending national champion? But lo and behold, I stand corrected again. Again, I'd like to go through the rankings. Maybe on Thursday, when we do the show on Thursday, we'll go through the rankings and look at by the rankings, the college football rankings 1 through 12, what we would have been looking at in first round matchups and possible matchups down the road. Because I think this year, or any other year that the college football format's been in place, you can make a case for more than 5 teams to be in it. It very seldom. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't remember the last
I
time.
agree with that. Yeah, it just because it makes no sense to me how a team, the best team in the country goes from 1 to 6, losing a game by 3 points. Okay,
No doubt,
I mean
no doubt.
that's no sense. But yet, to what you just said, I saw that a lot on Twitter Saturday night that people said, "Well, George is out," and I think it just has to do more with how the world is viewed today. Is that it's if in today's world you lose once, you're a loser. Get out of here. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that's how it
Well,
works. And
that's been my problem with the college football playoff format from the get-go.
yeah,
That's
and
been my
you have to
problem.
wait.
Even when go
Oh, go
back to the
ahead. Sorry.
BCS days, right, Doug?
Yeah. Right. Oh
Um,
yeah.
there's just very little wiggle room and basically no room for error in college football, and I think that's ludicrous. And again, we heard all these people in the college football hierarchy saying that, well, we can't extend the season beyond what we have it now because the kids have exams. And what my retort is to that, Doug, is how do they do it at the FCS level? How do they
Right.
do it at Division II and Division III level? I mean, you go to the FCS level, there's 24 teams that make a playoff. Okay.
Yep.
They shorten their season. They play 11 instead of 12 regular season games. It's not that difficult. But isn't it ironic that now, with the legalization of sports betting, just about everywhere in the United States, and the NCAA, the hypocritical organization that they are, is now getting 1% of the revenue bet on their sport, that they decided this year to expand the playoffs. I rest my case. Let's get to the NFL. Doug, good discussion. I'm always interested in hearing what you say. Just because we disagree doesn't mean we don't respect each other's opinion. And that's what people out there don't realize, So, again, and by the way, it's Jordan Travis, not Travis Jordan. It was a misspoke on Doug's end. And before you lambaste this, because I'm only mentioning this, Doug, not to point out a mistake. I'm mentioning it because I've made a lot lesser errors than that, and I always get called on it. So, folks, he knows it's Jordan Travis.
Yes,
he was
that's
just
correct.
emotional through the course of the conversation.
I stand corrected. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's talk some Thursday night football. And you know what? Since Al Michaels has been on the Prime Network, okay, for Thursday night football on Twitter and X, people have regularly complained about Michaels' lack of enthusiasm for bad matchups or low-scoring games. Well, this Thursday, we got the combo platter, okay, on this one. Just like at Chili's, okay? We got one bad team. We have one mediocre team, not by record, by play, and two teams that can't score in New England and Pittsburgh. Now, both teams are coming off pathetic showings, offensive showings. This one, in fact, when you think of the word, when you think of that, I could have used the word performance instead of showings, but I thought that's not fair to the word performance. Okay. From that standpoint. So Patriots put up 257 yards against the NFL's worst defense this past weekend, the Los Angeles Chargers in that one. And so they have solidified their position as the worst offensive team in the sport at 12.3 points per game. Pittsburgh was flatter than a newly paved road this past Sunday against Arizona. And this one, the Arizona's number 30th in points allowed, and Pittsburgh came through with 10 points and lost by 14 to Arizona at home. Now, concerning the total, Ross, we've already touched upon this before we even started this video. The look-ahead line was 35. Last night, that fell to 32. And this morning, it was down to 30.5, which puts us in the Iowa Hawkeyes territory on Big Ten games, okay, for 2023. So after extensive research that suggested underplay, okay, which I found, you'll use some of your systems, I use some of mine. It says this game should be an under. But here's the thing. If you do the research and look at the numbers, on all these unders, I found one that was 24-3 under, but the average score for that to occur was in the upper 30s. Okay. Yeah. Now we're talking just over 30 points per game. So that goes out the window. Okay. For me on the total here, instead, I'm going to hold my nose. Okay. I'm at Pittsburgh 7-5 with a point minus 37 point differential. We'll start Mitchell Trubisky over injured Kenny Pickett. Hard to imagine that the Steelers offense is actually better than New England's with Trubisky, but it is because he's going against the potential combination of Jones and Zappy, okay, in this one here. Coach Mike Tomlin's team, though, this season, 4-0 straight up and against the spread, coming off a loss, okay? So that's good news. And the straight-up winner of the games that these teams have played this season, the straight-up winner is a perfect 24-0 against the number. Give me Pittsburgh, Ross. I'm going to get that rosary out. I'm going to get some holy water, okay? The whole works here. I'm going to say Pittsburgh brings it home at -6.
Yeah, it's the lesser of two evils when it comes down to it. You know, and I took a lot of flack a couple weeks ago, and I said the Steelers were a fraud, and you know, Steeler fans came out of the woodwork, and some other people too. How could you say that? At the time, I believe they were, I don't know, 7-3 or something like that. Well, again, what Doug just said. I mean, the point per game differential. You look at their point per game differential and their yard per game differential, and it speaks more to a team that's mediocre to less than average. And that formula, this thing about, well, they find ways to win. Okay, they find ways to win, but by the same token, I think my statement holds a little bit of water, considering you just got beat by 2 touchdowns against an Arizona team that went into that matchup 2-9, I believe they were at the time, and now they're 3-9. So again, folks, it's never meant to be personal. The NFL is a week by week league, you know, more so than any other league. I mean, if you have a short memory and that's it with the NFL, you're going to lose a ton of money. It's about looking at the big picture. And by the way, this total that Doug just alluded to, the lowest total since 2006, when the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals played, and the total in that game was 30.5. So again, folks, it's been a long time since we've seen a total this low. And I'm sure if we go back to the 85 Bears, we'll see similar type of totals. But in this modern era of the NFL right now, this is uncharted waters. So in any event, let me get to my game. Doug, again, likes the Pittsburgh Steelers, -6 over the New England Patriots. I'm going to be looking at the game, the NFC South matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. Both these teams are coming off a win last week, and that's news because now Atlanta is 6-6, and they're on top of the NFC South all by their lonesome because New Orleans lost yesterday. Tampa, with that win over Carolina, is now 5-7. New Orleans is 5-7. Atlanta 6-6. And then, as we know, Carolina brings up the rear with a 1-11 record. So somebody's going to win this NFC South. I don't know if it's going to be again. I'm thinking one team's going to win this, possibly last year. Like last year, Tampa Bay won it with an 8-9 record. But having said that, let's concentrate on this matchup. The Falcons right now are a 2.5-point favorite. The total is 39. These two teams played in Tampa Bay, or in Tampa, I should say, on October the 22nd, and Atlanta walked away with a 16-13 win, albeit those 16 points scored were a little deceiving because they turned the ball over 3 times, and that really hurt their offensive effort because they did put up 401 yards of total offense in that game. So, again, I don't look for Atlanta to be turning the ball over 3 times again this week. I'll go out on a limb and say that, but you never know. In any event, you can't lose sight of the fact that that was a healthy Tampa Bay defense, too, when they faced them back in late October. This Atlanta team is off back-to-back straight up and ATS wins, albeit against New Orleans and the Jets. Not very good teams right now. They forced 5 turnovers in the last 2 games combined. They allowed 15 points to New Orleans, 8 points to the listless Jets. And now they're facing a Tampa Bay team that real head scratcher considering the quality of wide receivers they have. And Baker Mayfield's still a decent quarterback. And yet, Tampa Bay has scored 21 points or fewer in their last 4 and 7 of their last 8 games. Another thing to keep in mind, I said when Atlanta played Tampa Bay the last time, Tampa Bay was fairly healthy at that time. Well, that's not the case defensively this time around, especially at the linebacker position. And they're going to be very vulnerable against the run. Both Devin White and Levante David sat out last week's game and are probably doubtful again this week. And KJ Britt, the one starter that did play yesterday, got hurt early in that game and wasn't able to finish the game, which is never a good sign in terms of availability going forward. Atlanta is number 6 in the NFL, folks, in running the football. If they do anything well offensively, that certainly is. And I think that's going to be their ticket here, is to run the ball, set up play action pass, make the game a little bit easier for Desmond Ridder. And I think they'll run the ball for about 130 to 150 yards in this game. And by the way, Tampa Bay over the last 3 games has given up 134.3 yards rushing. And this is also Tampa Bay offense, like I said, 21 points or less in 7 of their last 8 and 340 yards or less in total offense in their last 8. This sets up well for Atlanta, I think. I'm gonna go on the money line here instead of laying the 2.5. And again, folks, I'm giving you this money line on Monday, the 4th. The game is until Sunday, the 10th. But I'm going to take Atlanta minus 135 on the money line over Tampa Bay. Doug?
I am going to 100% agree with you on this one, Ross. In fact, the very same bet, as a matter of fact. Yes, like Atlanta on the money line. And this one, and you mentioned about running the ball because for Atlanta, because they pretty much have to. Because if you look in their last 3 games, Atlanta has put together 342 yards passing in 3 games. That's 114 yards a game. Okay. So yeah, they're going to have to run the ball in order to succeed because Desmond Ridder isn't getting the job done. And then 114, I did some extra homework, Ross, bringing it here. A big Iowa Hawkeyes fan here. Iowa averaged more than 114 yards passing. Okay. This year in college football, they were 130th out of 133 teams with that number. So that tells you where Atlanta's passing offense is right now. But Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield, seriously, okay? I mean, this guy, he's not very good in general. He has performed better. His teams have won against losing teams, but against teams that are 500 or better, that does not happen. But do I trust Atlanta at the same time? Not really. So from that standpoint, I'm not going to give any points with Atlanta on this one. Also note that Tampa Bay has lost 8 straight games after playing a division game. Let's go with Atlanta on the money line, just like Ross said.
All right, so we agree. And see, folks, we don't just disagree for the sake of disagreeing. We do agree on occasion. And usually, for the most part, we do agree. But
yes,
there are times, and if you watch last week's videos, last 2 weeks, actually, there's been more than one occasion that we disagreed. And we do that respectfully. And that's where you should learn a lesson, folks, because it's okay to have a different opinion. It's when people attack you from a personal standpoint because you're not on their side. Okay. It doesn't have to be like that. And I remind you, we're pros at what we do. Speaking of which, Doug, why should they pay you at DocSports.com for your selections?
Well, just a good reason would be this past weekend. Went 4-2 in football, so I'm going to have a winning week. Even if depending on, I got something going on Monday night, so if you happen to see it, then I do have a side on the Monday night game. But yeah, nice 4-2 week, and in particular, 6-unit best bet winner with Troy. Okay, so that was a nice, comfortable win there. And then speaking of best bets, I had a 7-unit best bet on a winning college football Saturday and Sunday. I had Nevada, 7-unit best bet in their game. And then I had a 5-unit best bet winner also in the NHL. And as I'm saying it, I have no idea who I took. Okay. Thinking of that game right now. But I do know it was. Okay. That I know. Yeah. And I came back Sunday and I had the Boston Bruins on the puck line. So overall, Ross, everything was a very strong weekend across the board. Oh, and I almost forgot the props hitting 60%, had an anytime touchdown with The Jalen Hurts, I mean, that's not like exactly news that to take that pick, but not everybody did. I did, had a 6-unit winner, and everybody that bought it at Docs came away a winner with that one as well. So yeah, a number of very good things all weekend long, Ross, across the board. And so really happy with that. And so if there's looking for a reason, I just gave you a bunch of them right there. And with what's coming up this weekend, got a lot of good college basketball, actually some really interesting games to look forward to. So make sure that you check those out at my page as well. I'm turning it over to Ross Benjamin to take it from here.
And there's one college football game, Navy and Army, speaking of low totals. You know, the service academies, me and Doug have discussed this numerous occasions over the last few years. When they face each other, I believe it's right now like 16-1 to the under over the last 5 years or something like that. And they continue to lower these numbers. And the last I looked, I thought I saw 28 as a total in the Navy-Army game this Saturday. Not a very aspiring matchup, but like Doug said, a lot of college basketball on tap. Doug is an NHL guy as well. And he's had several top 10 finishes in the NHL over the years, and coming off a great weekend in football as well. So you can find Doug over at docsports.com, and that's a website that's been around for 53 years, folks. And when you're around that long in any business, let alone the sports betting business, that speaks volumes. All right, here's a reason why you should buy from me, folks. I'm coming off, I am passing on tonight's NFL game. If I took this game and put it on the Sunday card, there's no way I would even look twice at it. That's me. Anybody who uses it, they found value. From my perspective and how I look at things, I couldn't find any value in the game, but I hope you win, Doug. Doug's got the winner of this game. You can get it at docsports.com. So I went 6-2 in the NFL this week. I won on Thursday night with the Dallas game over the total against Seattle. That was an easy winner, 41-35. Yesterday, I went 5-2 in the NFL. And my two losers came by a combined 1.5. I had the New Orleans Saints plus the 4. They lose by 5. I had the one other game I can't think of off the top of my head. And folks, like Doug just said, sometimes we can't remember what we had because we're moving on to the next day. Anyway, I had 5 winners, 2 losers. 6-2 in the NFL this week. I went 2-1 in a college football conference championship games on Saturday. I had a college basketball winner on Saturday. That made me 8-3 for the weekend. And folks, all sports since August the 4th, I am 187 and 133. That's good for 59%. And dime players who stayed with me through that course of time and bet $1,000 on each one of those games are up $41,310 over that course of time. My NBA sides have been on fire, 48-20 since April 11th. And my college basketball totals since February the 6th of 2022, 56-34. I do have a college basketball totals winner going tonight in the game between Furman and I can't remember who they're playing, but the Furman game. They're playing in Arkansas. I take that back. Furman and Arkansas. College football, 70-48 since December the 2nd. That's good for 59%. In my NFL, 6-2, like I said, this past week, and since week 2, 44-30 in the NFL, which is good for 59%. And that, let's see, we're going into week 14 now. So the last 12 weeks, 59% winning percentage, folks. A lot of reasons why you should go to gamblersworld.net and buy my picks. And just a friendly reminder, not only myself, but 9 other great handicappers at gamblersworld.net, where we guarantee our selections. And that means quite simply, if you don't win, you don't make a profit on any single game, multi-game daily package, or any subscription plan of 30 days or fewer, we will credit your account back the exact amount of your purchase price. So we hope that's a moot point, which it is on most occasions, but it gives you a peace of mind knowing you're just not spending money. If you happen to catch one of the great handicappers on a bad roll during that course of time, you're going to have more money to try to recoup, to make another purchase and recoup your money and possibly make a profit. So good plan there. And also, folks, there is a subscribe button if you're watching on your PC or on your smart mobile device or your smart TV. I should say mobile device and smart TV. There's a black subscribe button for the latter two. And if you're watching on your PC, you'll see a WC logo right in the bottom right-hand corner of the page. Click on that. That'll get you subscribed. It's 100% free to do so. And also, folks, take one extra minute and go into your YouTube settings and hit the notification alert bell for the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast, Sports Betting Channel, I should say. And you'll be notified immediately upon any of our podcasts being put up on our great channel. Doug, there's a like button underneath.
I like it. Hit it. Okay.
There you go. Hit that like button.
That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, hit that like button, folks. Just a small token of your appreciation for the work, time, and effort we put in to giving you a quality podcast here and making you a smarter sports bettor today than you were yesterday. I'll be back tomorrow morning with Jesse Schule and Sean Higgs. We'll be discussing college basketball. I'll be back in the afternoon with Paul Bovey as we'll be looking at some upcoming NFL games as well. And also, Doug will be back with us on Thursday, and we'll be talking NFL at that particular moment in time as well. So until the next time, for Doug Upstone and Ross Benjamin, take care and God bless, folks.